Hello everyone, welcome to .NETMirror channel. Today we are diving into a critical security topic for Azure developers, connecting your Azure App Service to Azure Storage using managed identity. This is the best way to handle authentication without managing sensitive credentials in your code. Before we start, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our deep dive sessions of .NET and Azure. In today's agenda, we will talk about what is Azure App Service and Azure Storage. We will start defining what is managed identity and when you should use it. Then we will look at creating a basic ASP.NET app and Azure Storage. After that, I will show you how to connect App Service to Azure Storage using managed identity. Finally, we will wrap up with a live demo on the Azure cloud. First, let's look at the Azure App Service. It's fully managed platform as a service that lets you to build and deploy web applications and RESTful APIs without worrying about underlying infrastructure. You can use your favorite languages like .NET, Java, Python, or Ruby and run them on Windows, Linux, or even on containers. Below are the different deployment methods. You can deploy your app to Azure App Service. You can use traditional methods like FTP or publish profile in Visual Studio. For automation, there are Azure pipelines and GitHub Actions. You can also use tools like Azure CLI, Docker containers, even third party tools like Jenkins. We have covered all the deployment methods. I will provide the link in the description. Now, what about the storage side? Azure Storage is a Microsoft cloud based solution for modern data storage scenarios. It's highly secure and massive scalable. Its core services includes blob storage for unstructured data, which we are focusing today, Azure files, queues, tables, and managed disks. There are several ways to connect your app service to storage. You could use connection strings or shared access signature called SAS. There is also a public access for anonymous data, but the recommended approach is managed identity as its most secure and efficient method. So why we use managed identity? It provides an identity for your Azure resources so they can connect to other Entra ID protect services like Azure Storage or Key Vault without you having to manage any credentials in your code. It automatically handles secret rotation, which improves security. There are two types, system assigned and user assigned. In system assigned, which is tied to single resource, when it comes to user assigned, it can be shared between multiple Azure resources. Use managed identity whenever your resource needs to authenticate to another Azure service without storing secrets. Now, if you look at the slide, as a developer, you want to build an application using Azure resources or Azure VMs or app services like a source that accesses target like Azure Key Vault, Azure Storage, Azure SQL. You can use managed identity in this scenario. You don't need to manage any credentials within your code. Let's look at the code. We start by defining our container and blob names. We then use the default Azure credentials. This is powerful because it uses managed identity in production and your local developer credentials during development. We initialize the blob service client, get a reference to our blob, and call download streaming async to return the file system. No connection strings are needed in this case. Now let's jump into the portal and see the live demo of this setup in action. In the Azure portal, I already created a resource group and you can see an app service and a storage account. App service I created under free service tier plan, and the storage account it's a standard LRS version. So let me open the web app and the storage account. If you browse the application, we did not deploy any code here. When it comes to service account in the blob service, we don't have anything over here. Let's go to the code. I created a ASP.NET Core Web API. On top of weather forecast controller, I created one more controller called blob controller. Within this, I have two endpoints. One is read blob, other one is download blob. These methods are calling a blob storage service, which we are trying to inject over here. And from the blob service, read blob string async returning the content, and we are trying to return that to API. Now let's go to the service code. So within the service code, we have two read-only strings. One is the URI and the container name. And from this particular class, we have two parameters we are passing as a part of constructor. One is the storage account name and the container name. And we are trying to form the URI over here. And within the read blob, if you see here, we are trying to use default Azure credentials. In the local, it will try to use whatever the account you connected within the Visual Studio. We are going to give permissions for this particular account. I'll show you. Locally, it connects to Azure Storage via our local account. Then it is trying to read the blob content, and it is making a call as download content async, and the result is passing as a content to the API. Here we are creating a blob client. We are passing the URI and also we are passing the credentials. And the same code, when you deploy to Azure, this particular piece of code will be used by your managed identity. Now we are calling download content async. Once it is successful, it is returning the content. The other important thing you have to see is we are trying to register the blob storage. And if you see here, these are our blob storage. From the I configuration, we are trying to read these account name and the container name, and we are trying to inject this particular service to the controller. Now let's go to the app settings. So within the app settings, we have account name and container name. So let's take this container name only. So let's go to Azure. Let's add a container. Let's give the same name. So within this container, let's upload one of the file. So I'm using an upload option. Let's browse. I have a sample image. So this is a particular image. So let's go and upload. Now this is the JPG we uploaded. Now let's copy the URL. And if you try to access the URL, you will get access denied. So now let's try to read this particular image via web API code. Let's go to the API code. One more thing, we need to change the storage account. So this is our storage account name. To test the methods in the .http, I have added our endpoints as well. Let's run the application. This is weather forecast data. Now let's run our read blob. So this is our blob name we are passing here. So let's run this. So now when we hit this particular read blob, it says it is not authorized to perform this action. Let's go to Azure. Within the storage account, if you go to access control, we need to give access to our Visual Studio. Whatever the account you logged in your Visual Studio, for this particular account, you have to provide a storage account reader access. So if you go to the Azure and the role assignments, even though I have owner access, we have to explicitly give storage reader access. So let's add assignment, search for storage. Here we have storage blob data reader role. Based on your need, you can go and give other permission also, like contributor if you want to put right permissions. So let me select read option here, and in the users, select members. This is my particular account I'm using in Visual Studio. Let's go and grant access. In the role assignments, now you can see our connected Visual Studio account has storage blob data reader access. Now let's go and refresh the endpoint. Now if you see here, it is returned the data. Now we'll hit the endpoint download. You can go and bind this data to your web applications. Now let me hit the download endpoint. Now if you see here, the JPG is downloaded to my local. So how this is working is using this default Azure credentials, it is trying to pass your local Visual Studio account which has reader access. Now it is able to connect. Now let's go and deploy this app to our Azure App Service. Let's select this app service. The app is published. Let's browse weather forecast. So now from the Azure App Service, you're able to see the weather forecast data. In the similar way, we will try to read our blob. It says default Azure credentials is failed to retrieve the token. What we need to do now is we need to enable the managed identity. So let's go to the app service. Under settings, go to identity. Now here we need to enable the system assigned managed identity. I have created a previous video in a similar fashion how to connect to Azure SQL. You can go and watch. Now we will do in a similar way. This is system assigned. Let's switch on this. Click on save. What it does is it goes and creates an app registration within the enter ID. Let's do that. Now this app registration is done. Let's go back to our storage account. Do an add role assignment, which is very similar to what we did for the local account. Select storage blob data reader. This time instead of user, you have to select managed identity. Select the members. Now you can see there are two app services available. Click on that. And our app service is DNM demo SAMI. Let's select that. For your reference, if you have not enabled managed identity on the app service, you don't get this particular option over here. To get this option, go and enable managed identity on the app service. Now let's select this. Here what we are trying to do is we are trying to provide access to storage account to app service via this managed identity. So let's assign this. Now if you check the role assignment, now we have one more data reader access, which is our managed identity. Now let's refresh this page. Now if you see here, it is returning the our blob content, which means that your app service is able to connect to your storage account via managed identity. Let me try the other endpoint, which is download. So now if you see here, the image is downloaded to your local. This is the image we uploaded to our storage account. Now we are able to download from app service via managed identity. In this way, without any credentials, using managed identity, you can connect to storage account, read your blob content or download your blob content. Thank you for watching the video. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to .NET Mirror channel. I will see you in the next video.